What's going on, everybody, and welcome to the Other Side of the Firewall podcast, where we talk about the latest and greatest of cybersecurity news, as well as we highlight those movers and shakers and glass ceiling breakers, those people of color who've made it to the other side of the proverbial firewall. My name is Ryan Williams, and as always, I'm joined by Shannon Tynes.
What's up? What's up?
And Chris Abacon.
What's going on, everybody?
What's going on? So welcome to the Wednesday episode of the podcast. So Monday, Tuesday are topics, Wednesday discussion, Thursdays Ask a CISSP, and then Fridays movies, books, games, and all that cool stuff. Speaking of books, you can pick up The Other Side of the Firewall, the guide, by going to theothersideofthefirewall.com or ramcyber.io. Definitely check it out. Again, indie author, first time publishing, published under our LLC, which is Ram Cyber Consulting and Assessments LLC. But without further ado, I give it to Shannon.
All right, everybody. So this article comes from CISOonline.com, and the title of this one is 10 Tough Cybersecurity Questions Every CISO Must Answer. Every CISO is in CISO. And it's got some interesting ones in here, right? So just highlight the 10 real quick, right? The first one is, am I a business enabler or an impediment, right? How can we achieve the right security balance for our company's risk tolerance? Let's see here. What are the right metrics to present to the board? That one is one that we've talked about in the past as well, right? Like what is going to sound good to them, right? And make it tie it to money usually is how you get what you want. What does cybersecurity mean to the organization? Am I effectively communicating technical risks? Which I think the technical risks are being communicated. It's just a matter of how important everybody else in the C-suite or the board really thinks they are. Does my team feel empowered to challenge me? This one was an interesting one to me, right? Because it's like, if you have CISOs out there that think they know it all and they're not taking anything from their team, like it may make them shut down a little bit. So that's an interesting one to me, that you need to be approachable with your team even, right? To get all the possible indicators or all the possible information that you can. Never assume that you know everything, right? What do our customers want us to do for security? Usually they don't care about security. They just want whatever they want as fast as they can. So that's a hard one to manage, right? Where does all the organization's data really reside? This is an interesting one because this is one, even in the DoD, can be an issue, right? Like sometimes there's information stored away somewhere where it shouldn't be, or it's not properly protected, right? You have PII in a folder that's not properly protected or has the permissions to have the right people seeing it, things of that nature, right? So you got to know where all your organization's information is really being held. How will AI impact my staffing? This one is a very big one in this day and age, right? Whether it be that your staffing will be cut because of it or them interacting with it because you're utilizing it. Like you got to be on the train here, right? Don't get left behind. And the last one is, what's the next attack that could surprise me, right? I think we can always be surprised with stuff that's out there, but these are all interesting questions I saw. As I read them, I was like, man, okay, I could see how that is. And some of them were just recurrences of things that we have brought up on the show before, right? Like, so especially when it comes to how to present your case to the board, right? Like, hey, this is why we need this. And you have to kind of toe that line, because we had, I believe it was the discussion last week where we're talking about how you can present it and whether or not you're becoming that annoying gnat that's always going to them, and how you're being perceived, where they're like, every time this guy or gal comes in here, this is what we got to hear, and you're just being tuned out, right? You don't want to be in that situation either. But Chris, what's your thoughts on this?
Really, one of my first thoughts was, what does an organization do in a perfect world, right? So something we're taught as security professionals is that security needs to be, like, let's just say software development or the software development lifecycle, right? Security needs to be something that's considered at every stage of this software development lifecycle, from development to the actual production, to all stages, right? So that's kind of the mindset that I'd have for CISOs, right? So in this case, security starts from the top, right? The CISO should be able to influence, in a perfect world, should be able to influence the CEO on some of those decisions, right? But we all know that there are factors that that restrict from that, based on specific product requirements. There's shareholder, there's politics and all those things involved. There's budgets to be involved, right? So one thing to consider for me is just really CISOs, I would say, based on your organization, have different varying levels of influence, right? Some more so than others, right? So maybe talking to the CISOs that maybe they're newer CISOs, or they just joined the C-suite, right? Or they've just restructured the organization such that the CISO has a little bit more visibility into the C-suite, right? But to me, and really what it comes down to is, important thing is not necessarily the authority to drive change, but to ensure that your C-suite views cybersecurity as a business enabler, not an impediment, not the CISO being the impediment to security or to new products and services. Rather, how do we as an organization ensure that our, let's just say, for example, our customers' data is protected when we're implementing a new solution, a new product, or a new service, right? So those are the things that I think about at the C-suite level, at least in my experience, right? So it's um, also for CISOs, one question that stood out to me is like, how are we proactively anticipating new threats, right? So with that, as an organization, as a C-suite, you have to have a full understanding of your risks as an organization as a whole, to include financial risk, and physical, security risks, all that stuff. Your assets, understanding where your assets lie, having an inventory of where your data is at, which is part of risk management, understanding where that's at, and that's how you can, anticipate new risks, right? If you understand your environment, you can understand your threat vectors, right? You can understand your attack surface, and then you can go wild with, hey, this is how somebody could do this. Because if you ask the question, what if, there's a million scenarios, right? So it's, just up to the C-suite and, the senior leadership to determine, hey, which of these is likely to happen based on our security posture, right? And then another one is that whole AI thing, right? Like, as an organization, how are you leveraging AI? How are you prepared to use it? From a security perspective, are we taking into account where we upload and store our data, right? So I think big problem with a lot of these chatbots is there is a practice of uploading files that are company or proprietary, and then they're uploading that to ChatGPT, Grok, or whatever it might be, and that's potentially data leakage, right? And it's not even potentially, it is a data leakage. You just trained the AI about X company's financials or whatever it might be. So as an organization, are you prepared to protect your organization from AI in that scenario? But also, how are you using it responsibly? Have you purchased an instance that's enterprise, that has enterprise protections for that data, right? So they're like to include like Copilot, or maybe some in-house tools you built out through your cloud, right? So there's so many ways to do this, to implement AI in your company. And I think as a CISO, you just have to be prepared to have those questions with your team and say, hey, look, let's pause for a second, and where could we potentially leak data, right? Where we could be potentially be doing something that we're not doing. So these are 10 really good questions. There's a lot that goes to this, and I'm sure we could talk about this for hours, right? But Ryan, what are your thoughts?
No, definitely. Because you guys covered this really well. So what I have is one tip as well as a plug for next week's interview, because it falls in this very well. So there's a lot of synergy in this article, which I didn't pick up until after I picked it. So shout out to Mary Kay Pratt from BISO. So she actually put me in an article way back in the day. Shout out to her. She's doing some great work over there. The tip would be to what Chris alluded to. So if you're in whether you be in a mom and pop or a major organization or a $1 trillion company, right? If you're going to implement Copilot or some other um, uh, AI assistant enterprise wide, understand the classifications of data before you get into it, right? Because you may pay for a enterprise solution that does not share with the model, but it will share with the organization. So that could be just as problematic if you don't properly have the data labeled and teach your employees, which are always going to be your weakest link in this case, how to properly classify it before you flip the switch on, right? So if it's supposed to be internal, that needs to be internal. If it's supposed to be public, it should be public. But if you don't label emails, you don't label PII or other proprietary information in the proper classification, it'll go into the model, and then you may see it on PowerPoints and things of that nature in the future you do not want to see it on. So keep that in mind, right? You might have an email that was between you and a director that you don't necessarily want to see on another team. So just as we logically separate our different teams when it comes to VLANs, right? Remember, network security? You have to do the same thing when it comes to your data. Everything should not be shared amongst everyone in the organization, just because it could cause internal strife and issues, or put out information that just should not be put out in a public manner. take that into consideration before you flip the switch. And then the plug would be I interviewed Edgar Vanterpool will be on the next Ask a CISSP. He is a BISO, so he's the first BISO we've had on the show to discuss what the role is. So, right, Business Information Security Officer. Very interesting conversation. He went from mechanic. He's very technically minded, right? Like the guy takes apart cars as a hobby, and he's trained in being a mechanic on certain platforms of vehicles. He went from that to, managing their supply chains and diving into infrastructure and cybersecurity, and then he is now a BISO for an organization. So huge shift, but as he discusses it, he kind of explains to you how he thinks and how processes work. It's perfect. So again, it shows that there's no linear path to anything in cybersecurity, and you could take those things that you've learned and you've perfected and mastered, and then apply them to other areas within cybersecurity, and he's able to talk business because of his experience, and then able to motivate the C-suite and to better protect themselves. So very good conversation. We get kind of silly in there too, right? I like to keep things light. So I asked if a BISO was a Pokemon, what kind of Pokemon would it be? So definitely check that out. We had a lot of fun. He's a real cool dude. And that'll be on next week in place of the regular weekly schedule. But that's pretty much it for me, man. Like I think you guys covered this very well. It's a really good article as well. Definitely continue to hit us up. We're at theothersideofthefirewall.com as well as ramcyber.io. That's where you can pick up the book as well, the guide, The Other Side of the Firewall. So definitely check that out. You buy it for me now, you get a discount, but it'll be available everywhere books are sold. If you go to a store, you buy a book, and you don't see it on the shelf, you demand they put it on the shelf, all right? You fill out whatever slip you need to fill out. You go to any website you need to go out. You ask for the manager, all right? You say, where's this book at? I don't like it's not on the shelf. I appreciate it. And then you can hit me a person at RY Security Guy. That's RY Security Guy. You can find me pretty much everywhere, but LinkedIn is where I'm most active. And where can they find you, Chris?
You can find me on LinkedIn under my name, Chris Abacon, last name spelled A. Bacon.
There it is. Stay safe. Stay secure.